The Doctor. In the TARDIS. Next stop, everywhere.
Hello again, everyone. Welcome back to Next Stop Everywhere, the Doctor Who podcast. I'm one of your co-hosts, Charles Skaggs, back in the TARDIS once again, joined by two of my wonderful people that I love so much. Jesse Jackson, my wonderful partner in time, and Xan Sprouse, our special guest companion here to talk Resurrection of the Daleks. So, Jesse, how's it going?
It's good. I am so thrilled we get to talk to Xan. I got to hang out with her and talk Casablanca last week, and we had a good time, though she did not love Casablanca as much as I did. So I think I will return the favor and perhaps not love this episode as much as she might. But that is not deliberately. That just, I think, is how circumstances are going to roll out.
You sure? Because that sounds kind of retaliatory.
I know. As I was saying that,
this is like revenge podcast here.
Yeah, I know. Like, oh, take that. You don't love the film that I had nothing to do with, so therefore, yes. I'm looking forward to talking about it because as a fan of both Xan and Charles's other podcast, I kind of feel like I'm in the studio audience, like of recording, like I'm either on Ghostwood or Drunk Cinema, which, by the way, I saw your tweet today that now that will be a wonderful tribute. We'll get to that later.
We'll talk about that.
Yes. So anyway, Xan, I always love talking to you, and I'm welcome to the podcast.
Well, thanks for having me, and I love talking to you guys as well. And I don't get to talk to you as much, Jesse, but I always do love it. And, oh boy, you not liking a JNT episode? I don't know if my heart is going to be able to stand that. I shouldn't speak ill of the dead, but this is definitely a great example of JNT's coupon cutting for trying to make a Doctor Who episode.
To be fair to John Nathan Turner, there were some gems during his run. Like the Caves of Androzani, for one, Remembrance of the Daleks.
Yeah.
So
he definitely had some gems, but that is
the Five Doctors.
He's the dad that comes home with Hydrox when you ask him for Oreos. He is a penny pincher, that one.
What's funny is, right, we've talked about that, is he the worst showrunner of all time on Doctor Who? And we decided we didn't need to do a whole episode of that debate because it was like pretty much, okay, yeah, he was. Okay, move on.
Yeah. All right, so like I said, here in episode 216, we're going to be discussing Resurrection of the Daleks. This was the fourth serial from Doctor Who Season 21, all the way back in 1984. The very same year, The Adventures of Buckaroo Banzai was released. Just saying. Go figure.
It was a good year.
Yeah.
And in a certain David Lynch's Dune.
This is true. But hey, those are other podcasts, right?
I'm just realizing we've been stuck in 1984 for like a month, Charles.
Yeah, kind of. We are kind of stuck in the 80s a little bit, but we're going to break out of that here pretty soon. So this is a special occasion for me because once again, I get my two podcast worlds colliding here at Next Stop Everywhere. Two of my wonderful co-hosts joining me here. And this one, of course, the story starred Peter Davison as the Fifth Doctor, Janet Fielding in her last story as Tegan Jovanka, although she does go on to do Big Finish audios, and Mark Strickson as Vislor Turlough, who doesn't make his exit until the next story, Planet of Fire. And then followed in the next episode after that, The Caves of Androzani, where Peter Davison leaves. So this is like the first of everybody's mass exit to clean house for the Colin Baker era.
As the dominoes fall, right?
Yes, they do.
Okay.
It's the rats abandoning the ship, I think.
Yes.
Kind of. So this was written by Eric Saward, who wrote some other stories for Davison's era and also Colin Baker's era. He wrote The Visitation, which we talked not that long ago here, which was a pretty decent episode. Earthshock, which is a personal favorite because Adric dies in it. Hooray. Revelation of the Daleks. That was probably one of the better stories from Colin Baker's run. And this one. So it's his four. But primarily he was known for being the script editor on the last couple seasons of Peter Davison's run and then Colin Baker's first season.
Okay.
Which kind of tells you something because it was not really that great of a era for scripts on Doctor Who, I think. And I do blame a lot of that on Saward, personally. So, guest cast, we have Terry Molloy as Davros, who makes his debut in the role, taking over for certain Michael Wisher, who originated the role in, Genesis of the Daleks and Destiny of the Daleks. And Terry Molloy has gone on to do Revelation of the Daleks and Remembrance of the Daleks, his last two stories for the Doctor Who TV series, but then returned as Davros for Big Finish Audios as well. And he's done some spectacular ones, including Davros, where he's kind of reunited with Peter Davison's Doctor. So check that out if you get a chance. It's really good audio. Rodney Bowes plays Stein. Rula Lenska, who's kind of famous here in the States for doing like Alberto VO5 commercials back in the day. She plays Styles in this, and she's also did an episode of Space 1999, and she also did the voice of Lintella in the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy radio series, if you're at all familiar with that. Maurice Colburn makes his debut as Gustav Lytton, and he turned up later in Revelation of the Daleks, where we got to know a little bit more about Lytton's character before he ends up getting killed and converted into a Cyberman. Or excuse me, I'm thinking Attack of the Cybermen. I got that one confused, sorry. Del Henney plays Colonel Archer, and Chloe Ashcroft plays Professor Laird. And Leslie Grantham played Kiston, the guy who kind of initially gets taken over by Davros and turned into his mind-controlled minion. So that's basically our cast in this one. Now, before we get into trivia and stuff, I want to get everybody's general reactions to this story. Doesn't sound like either of you are particularly fond of this one. So, Xan, since you're our wonderful special guest companion, why don't we start with you first?
I had to watch this twice because my mind kept wandering because it was not grabbing me at
Right.
all. And while I was watching it, Chris came upstairs and he said, "Oh, isn't this that one we went to the theater to watch back when the Grandview Theater was running Doctor Who episodes?"
Okay.
And I was like, "Oh yeah," like I'd completely forgotten that we'd done that.
So obviously it lodged really deep into your memories.
Yeah, and it's one of those that you really want to be good because it's Peter Davison and it's Daleks, and you think that really that's like bacon and eggs or spaghetti and meatballs or mac and cheese.
Yeah.
But then you have J&T who comes in and has to throw a lobster in the mac and cheese, or makes the meatballs out of tuna or something. I don't know what happened, but
Or he dumps it on the floor and then puts it back on the plate and tries to serve it.
It's just that there's something off with the flavor of this episode, and it didn't. There are a lot of things about it that are interesting because of it being Tegan's last episode, and I like this episode for what Tegan says when she leaves.
Okay.
And we can talk about that later, but
yeah, I do want to talk about that.
What'd you say?
I said I do want to talk about that, yeah.
Yeah. So I like that. As far as last episodes of Companions go, I think this one is good. It's not terribly overly dramatic. It's not terribly sad. It just you're happy for her because this is what she wants.
Right.
So I like that about it. I like that there are a couple of Daleks. There's not many, but there are some, and you get a lot of Davros in this one.
No, they were all kind of off camera somewhere, right? Yeah.
When I talked about J&T when it's penny pinching, it's sort of, we're going to have a Dalek episode, but what's going to happen is the Daleks are going to take over the humans. So it's like they're Daleks, but not really. They're Daleks, but cheaper. All we have to do is make our humans talk monotone, and there we go. We have Daleks.
Yeah.
So
maybe that's why Stephen Moffat did all those decades later in Asylum of the Daleks.
Yeah. And then there are, of course, like the Dalek pig people, and that's the wonderful and cursed thing about Daleks, is that they are very flexible in that way. You can pretty much make them do whatever you want them to do because they are this evil collective. And even if you only have enough budget for like 4 Daleks and a Davros, you can still make a Dalek episode because that's how the lore and the canon of the series has presented itself.
Yeah. And Jesse, how about you? What are your thoughts on this one?
I think part of the issue with classic Who is the way we watch it. So since I have not watched a lot of episodes, Tegan leaving didn't mean anything to me.
Right.
Like, oh, okay, I don't have that connection because I haven't followed the journey. In fact, I was thinking, didn't she leave before and came right back? Was that the character that did this? And we talked about she had
at the end of Arc of Infinity. Yeah, they kind of, well, actually, I take that back. They at the end of Time Flight, and then they brought her back in Arc of Infinity.
Right. So I vaguely remembered that. There are some interesting things in this episode, and when we talk about the topics, there are things that I'm going to share that are highlights. But this is, pardon me, if I tell just the short story, because that's what I do.
Okay, let me get my pillow and my blankie, and I'll just kick back.
Yeah. I'm going to go get some snacks.
Yes. So I was at a seminar when I was working for the property management company, and the lady said if she was doing a lecture and she was saying a presentation, she said if I could do anything, I would get rid of the copy machine at the apartment complex. Because what people do is instead of printing a new form, they make a copy of a form. And then they make a copy of the form.
Right.
Then they make a copy of the copy. This felt like a copy of a copy of a copy of a Dalek episode to me.
Okay. Just because you'd seen some things before.
Yes.
And even though maybe not in chronological order, you just kind of recognize the story.
Yes. And there are, and I think what stands out to me.
So like Dalek tropes, essentially.
Yes, it feels a little bit like that. Like, oh, the Daleks want to take over the world again. Okay. Which I get that's what they do, but there are ways to make it seem more fresh. And this felt like a copy of a copy.
Okay. Just want to make sure. Okay. So trivia. Thought I'd run that down really quickly. I don't know how you guys watched this one. Originally, when I watched this on PBS back when I lived in Medina, I got to see this as in the 4-episode format. But originally when this was transmitted, it was transmitted in the UK in the 2-episode format of 45 minutes each. So essentially it's kind of like the first real Doctor Who story in the modern format.
Yeah, BritBox shows it that way. They show part 1 and part 2. They show it in the 45-minute episodes. So that's how I ended up watching it.
Yeah, and the DVD
BBC.
Go ahead.
Yeah, BBC DVDs are 4 parts, which is what I also remember from PBS.
Yeah.
Back in the day, it being broken up into 4 parts. And usually with us, 2 parts were on a night, and then, so this would have taken 2 weeks to watch this episode, I think.
Yeah, and the special edition DVD that I have of Resurrection of the Daleks has both options. Like, it's got a disc for if you want to watch in the 2-episode format, or another disc if you want to watch in the 4-episode format.
That's a nice feature.
Yeah, it is.
That's a nice feature.
And I watched it in the 2-episode because I hadn't seen it in that format. I've only watched it in the 4-episode format, so I kind of wanted to check it out. That's the way I had to watch this one. But apparently, the reason they did this in a 2-episode format when they originally broadcast this was because of a late scheduling change by the BBC. That, for whatever reason, they were monkeying around with the schedule and decided to, okay, we're going to cram all 4 episodes into 2 weeks. So we're going to air, parts 1 and 2 as a 45-minute block, and then 3 and 4 the next week. The story was originally produced to be the season 20 finale, but due to a strike by electricians, they ended up postponing the story and, with minor rewrites, resurrected it for Peter Davison's final season, season 21. And this was originally supposed to have been directed by Peter Grimwade, who directed Eric Swartz's previous story, Earthshock, which was much more dramatic and much more powerful. But when the story was postponed, Grimwade took members of the production team out to dinner, but apparently didn't invite showrunner John Nathan Turner because he had intended to take him out separately. But J&T being J&T, he felt slighted by the omission and apparently refused to allow Grimwade to direct the story when they rescheduled it for season 21 because he's kind of petty like that. Yeah, exactly.
That is,
again, just more J&T horror stories.
Yes, exactly. Wow.
So I thought that was interesting. And then as well as changing the director, the postponement also meant that Michael Wisher, who originated the role of Davros in Genesis of the Daleks and then later in Destiny of the Daleks, became unavailable. So this is why we get Terry Molloy in this story. We were originally going to get Michael Wisher, but because of the postponement, we didn't get that because obviously actors have schedules and they make contracts and sign contracts and book things. So if something gets delayed, they may not always be able to appear and things have to be changed. So that's what happened. So I thought that was some interesting trivia this time. All right, we have 3 topics. We're going to break this down very simply as possible. It's kind of because it is kind of a complex story, especially trying to keep track. At least I had a problem for a while there, keeping track of like which Daleks were on what side and who's on what side. I don't blame you if you didn't, had trouble keeping everybody straight without a scorecard. So topic number 1, let's talk the 5th Doctor. Let's talk Tegan in her final story on Doctor Who, at least as far as TV series goes. And let's talk Turlo. The Doctor I definitely want to talk about because we see him, obviously Peter Davison's Doctor is generally considered to be the nice one. The one that's very pleasant, very amiable, someone that he's very warm and friendly. But this is I think probably the closest we see him, with the possible exception of the Caves of Vandrazani, where he's kind of pushed to the edge a little bit. He gets a little dark in this one, especially with his intention to kill Davros. So, Jesse, we'll start with you since we started with Xan before. What was your reaction to the 5th Doctor and also Tegan's departure? I know you said you weren't overly, you really weren't invested in Tegan's story. Yeah. But what did you make of the way it was handled, I guess?
Yeah, so a couple things. One, it was really shocking to see the Doctor use a gun and kill a Dalek. That creature.
Yeah, the Dalek that was out of its casing. Yeah, the Dalek blob. Yeah.
Yeah. You just don't think of the Doctor using a handgun. Really almost any gun. And so that was a little, huh? The thing I don't know is when she leaves and she talks about how there's just so much death and she just can't do this anymore.
Tegan, yeah.
Yeah, I said, I wonder if they follow up on this. Or is this one of those? I mean, because the Doctor seems to be concerned.
Right.
But I've seen enough, I've watched some Colin Baker and episodes that he doesn't seem to have that guilt. So I wonder if this was, maybe if they'd had Davison stay another season,
right? Maybe
they would have expanded on that a little more. But instead it felt like, well, that's really a thoughtful words and it's a good thought. But, is the show going to follow up? But I will tell you what I loved is the Doctor bantering back and forth, trying to convince, Stein.
Yeah.
Stein and Stiles. Once again, not a bad idea to use, but him trying to, push him and try to, find his own things. I thought that was nice. And the flashbacks of showing you that all the images of the past episodes and the Doctors and Companions, I really liked that part of the episode.
That was a nice fan moment.
Yeah, it was a very good fan moment. It just as I said earlier, and there's nothing wrong with, it just didn't feel like anything fresh as far as the Dalek story.
Yeah. Okay. And Xan, how about you? Any thoughts as I tear you away from your tablet?
No, I'm just looking at something, and because I'm not wearing my glasses,
Yeah.
my glasses are so purple when I look at them because of the blue blockers. When I look at them when I'm on screen, I have to take them off. So if I'm reading something,
Oh, really?
it's like right here.
Interesting.
Yeah, because I'm so nearsighted. So
Right there with you.
Peter Davison's doctor is one of my favorites, and you're right, he is one of the nicer. He's the doctor that would go to tea, and he's very proper with his cricket outfit, and
he's very handsome, very dashing.
Oh yes, he is. He is very, and he's one of
Sorry,
the
did
least
I sidetrack you on a fantasy there just for a moment?
I'm just thinking about Peter Davison and his celery. Anyway.
His decorative vegetable, if you will.
His decorative vegetables.
Yeah.
Yes. So he is one of the least. He's one of the least sarcastic doctors. He's not that sort of crazy uncle or sarcastic jerk of an uncle who is the Colin Baker, which I love his causticness.
Right.
In Colin Baker, but he's not that type. But you're right, Jesse. As soon as the Daleks show up, he's like, "Oh, we got to kill all of these." And I think that when you've seen a lot of classic Who,
right,
you realize this is what the Daleks do. This is how bad the Daleks are. That they bring this side of the Doctor out. And here's the Doctor with his own sense of morality and his own prime directive, essentially.
Right.
He's going from world to world to have adventures and to help and not screw anything up. But as soon as he sees a Dalek, he's like, okay, we're going to kill all of these things. We're going to blast them from space. We're going to destroy their planet. We're going to do this, 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 and this. And there was a scene where one of the Daleks is saying that, we're going to duplicate you and we're going to send you back to Gallifrey and you're going to infiltrate the elders. And I'm like, oh, better hurry up. That's an interesting thing about watching it now is when they talk about everything that the Daleks are going to do to Gallifrey, you're like, yeah.
Maybe she's like, all you guys should do just kind of wait for a little bit and then
just let time, let's just time take its course, and this is all good.
Well, one of the speculation on this one and that this story is actually the first opening salvo of the Time War.
I saw that
because essentially it's the Daleks declaring war on the High Council of Gallifrey.
Yeah,
right, on the High Council of Gallifrey.
I saw that note
Jesse.
too, and I saw that note too, and I thought that was interesting. And
because I kind of wonder if Russell T Davies, after watching the story, because we know he was a big '80s Doctor Who geek, that I wonder if that's where he kind of got the idea from for the Time War.
I think I saw as I was doing some research on the episode on one of the websites that reportedly he had said that.
Yeah.
That, he had thought that. It was good. And, what's interesting, as you mentioned that, Xan, is I go back to my experience of modern Who, right? So the first time I'd seen a Dalek was with Christopher Eccleston.
Oh, when Christopher Eccleston loses his mind.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He
so if you thought Davison was bad, wait till Eccleston, right?
Yeah, and so by bringing that up, it brings me back that memory of, because I remember going, I knew who a Dalek was because, just popular culture, but it was the first time I'd seen it in a show, and it was strange how Eccleston changed gears, right, and switched.
Oh, he's gonna kill
I saw it
Dalek
happen. I made it happen.
I think that is really well said. That there is something about, and
this is before the Time War, so obviously, in Eccleston, by the time Eccleston's era comes around, the Doctor is almost, like suffering from PTSD because of the Time War.
Well, and
And has this really, like, as if he hated the Daleks before, he really hates them now by this point.
Well, we're all three married, not together, to other people, just in case anyone was asking. Yeah. Oh, wait.
I was going to say, did I miss something?
Yeah. And we've all have long friendships, but there are people in your life that you adore, but they can say something and it immediately gets under your skin.
Yeah.
Right? Like they push that button.
Because of having history with them.
Because of that history. And even if it doesn't mean, they don't mean to push their button, they do. Mm-hmm. Right? And so this Daleks push the Doctor's button. And he can't stand the Daleks. So if you can have someone you love push your button, can you imagine someone you hate, pushing that button and doing that? So
and Davros certainly doesn't help either because Daleks is great at pushing the Doctor's buttons.
Yeah, Davros is the
probably next to the Master. He's probably the biggest one who can push the Doctor's buttons the most, I think.
I would almost say that Davros is worse than the Master. Because the Master and the Doctor both being Time Lords, there is that there is that Professor X Magneto thing going on where there's that mutual respect, there's that shared culture, the shared history, that whole sort of like we meet again, old friend.
We went to the academy together. Yeah. Right.
That crap does not happen with Davros. As soon as he sees Davros, he's like, okay, we're gonna kill you and whatever spaceship you're, we're gonna blow it to smithereens.
Right.
And the thing that the one thing that I've never understood with Doctor Who is that you would think that after all this time of seeing Daleks and fighting Daleks and knowing what they're about, the Daleks are like the Borg 100 times over. They are a collective and they are just out for destruction. They're not even out for assimilation necessarily. They're out for destruction and domination, and that's all. And it's almost like the Doctor, like you said, Charles, has PTSD and he's in denial about the Daleks because every time they come up with a new companion,
right?
That you turn a corner, there's the Daleks. They got their plunger, they're ready to get you, and his companion's like, "Oh my God, what is that?" I mean, you would think that at some point in their travels, they would say, "So, Doctor, that was really hard for us to get through. What's the hardest thing you've ever been through?" He's like, all right, there are these creatures called the Daleks, and if we ever run into them, you freaking come get me, and you run. And like he never tells anybody about the Daleks until they show up. And then
he really needs to give his companions like a fact sheet, a frequently asked question sheet. Like
that's exactly what I was going to say, Charles. Like
it's like hi, welcome aboard the TARDIS. Here's some information. Here, why don't you go ahead and read this?
Yeah. Here, like this is a quick thing. Everything you need to know about the TARDIS, but was afraid to ask. Like a quick guideline.
Go into like a local bakery and there's like a bunch of pictures that say like do not accept checks from these people.
Right.
That's what he should have. It's like there should be pictures of the Daleks, the Cybermen, the Sontarans, like everybody that he's ever come in contact with multiple times. There should be pictures of them. Like if you see these guys, we're the heck out of there.
Yeah.
So I always thought that
turn around, run the other way. Exactly.
Turn around, run the other way, and I am going to turn into a Doctor that you don't think you know. And because that always happens with the Doctor too. It's sort of like, Doctor, that's not like you. This is a living thing. No, it's not. It's Davros. He's dying right now.
Yeah. Well, when I first watched this episode back in the 80s, I'd only seen like the last two Tom Baker stories, and then Davison's run. So that by the time this story came around, he makes this comment about, like, I had my chance once of I'm paraphrasing here, but that he had his chance once to destroy them, and he's regretted it ever since. And so referring, as I find out later, referring to that great moment, that iconic moment in Genesis of the Daleks, when the Fourth Doctor is holding those two wires together and going, "Have I the right?"
Destroy an entire race?
Yeah, exactly. Do I have the right to destroy, to destroy them and end the threat of the Daleks forever? And, because of circumstances, he doesn't. But we find out, in this story that apparently that's been kind of like itching at the back of his skull ever since. That regret. And now it's like, okay, I've got the opportunity. Like, Davros is here. I got to take care of this once and for all.
And it's really molded the Doctor's character because, like you said, Jesse, we see it with Eccleston. And I remember watching that episode when it first came out and just being like, oh, and I was trying to do my best not to read anything or hear anything. And I'm like, that's a Dalek in there. And then when I see one, I'm like, yeah! And I see it all chained up and I'm like, yes, this is finally going to happen.
Right.
And I get in that mode with the Doctor and I'm just like, kill them. They're Daleks. What are you doing? I don't care if they're spongy little squid men inside that look all vulnerable. No, they're Daleks. Get rid of them.
They're completely irredeemable. Yeah.
Yeah.
Get in that mindset of the Doctor. I'm very much like, hey, the Autons are just programmed plastic. It's not their fault. Blah blah blah. The Cybermen, you can maybe reprogram them. I'm very much like the Doctor in a lot of ways, but not with the the Daleks are terrifying. They're horrible. They are not. There's nothing redeemable about them. Even Davros in this episode, you're like, yeah, I was frozen for 90 years and it was boring. I'm like, yeah, that's what you get, Davros. There's no sympathy. There's no sympathy for them. There's nothing. And I think that's when this aspect of the Doctor, and like you said, Charles, having come from the Tom Baker and then to this episode, where you really see that the Daleks just eat him alive mentally.
Yeah.
And I think that's one neat thing about this episode is that seeing Peter Davison, the nice Doctor, the sweet Doctor, the gentleman Doctor.
The likable Doctor, yeah.
He's quite the gentleman.
Yeah.
But this, he's like, oh, never again am I letting these guys out of my sights.
Right.
And I think that's an interesting thing on this episode because of all the Doctors to do that with, of all the Doctors to start that pattern, I think Davison is an interesting one.
Yeah.
And
even the nice Doctor wants to kill them and get rid of them, end their threat forever.
Exactly, the nice one, and even he is able to, like I said, he pulls out some of his Doctorness in that he knows that. Again, too many S names. Stein?
Yes. Yeah, Stein.
It's programmed by the Daleks, and he pulls, he pulls a Dr. Zarkov on him, and he's like, remember the Constitution. Do what you can. Remember, even if it's a song from the Beatles, I just got shades of Dr. Hans Zarkov watching that.
I was wondering when Flash Gordon was entered this conversation. I was waiting for it.
Am I wrong?
No, you're absolutely right. It's very much
that situation where he's like, keep remembering the Constitution. Which number was it? Bring back anything you can to get those Daleks out of your head.
Yeah.
He's not saying, okay, this guy looks like a human, programmed by the Daleks, kill him. He still has that Doctorness in him, but when it's rolling around with a plunger, forget it. He's done.
And it's interesting because, and go ahead, Jesse, you were going to say something.
I was just going to. I do agree with that, and it is. Davos and the Doctor back and forth is always kind of a nice banter. And I always want to look at the eyes that are, blacked out and go, and then I know it's supposed to be the center eye, but I was like, is he like Daredevil using senses or something? It's just, anyway, I just was going to talk about it. I love their dialogue back and forth. I love the disdain the Doctor has for him and the disdain Davros has for the Doctor. These are, in the sports art, these two teams just don't like each other, and so it's great.
So this violence that the Fifth Doctor kind of shows all of a sudden, I think I think it's partially the reason why Tegan ends up saying, okay, that's it. I'm done. I'm tapping out. I've had enough. And, by this time she's traveled with the Doctor quite a while. Obviously, we don't know how exactly long. We know at least 3 seasons. And she says, I can't take this anymore. All the, she's troubled by all the death that surrounded this story. And she's like, that's it. I'm ready to go. I'm back on Earth. It looks pretty much like the time period I left. So I'm going to try and get back to my life now. So I like the fact that, this was pretty unusual, I think, for a companion exit at this point. That, deciding that's it, I've had enough, I'm ready to go. And it was different because when we talked the Faceless Ones last week, Jesse, that when Ben and Polly said, that's it, I'm done, it wasn't in this bitter way.
No.
It wasn't in like a very hurt way. But Tegan is very upset, and the doctor's like, look, don't be like this, don't leave like this. And she's like, I can't take this anymore, doctor. I gotta go. And she just runs out. She starts crying and just running out the door.
When she comes back, is she regretting her decision? Or is she having second thoughts? I wasn't sure how that last scene with her.
The way I've always taken that scene is that she wanted one last look of the TARDIS as it disappeared.
Okay.
For that closure.
Okay, that makes sense.
But that's me. I don't know. How did you take it, Xan?
I took it as that because what I started alluding to earlier is what she said when she said goodbye. She said, This is what my aunt told me about being an air hostess. When it's not fun,
right,
don't do it anymore. And this is not fun. And that's, you get glimpses of it in the beginning of certain episodes that don't continue with each other.
Yeah.
And especially a lot in Later Who, where you'll see the beginning of the episode where it'll say, oh, that was fun. We got to watch the first...
Well, like all the New Year's or whatever, like recently.
Yeah, we got to...
In Resolution, they get to see like 20 straight New Years on different planets, whatnot.
Exactly. Or we got to watch the first bicentennial, or whatever they're doing.
Whatever magical, awesome thing they get to watch. Yeah.
Right. They talk about the fun thing they did, because when we see the doctor is always in some sort of peril. There's always some obstacle he has to get through, and the companions have to get through. But you would assume, since, like you said, Charles, you have companions that stick around for a couple of years.
Yeah, that's one thing.
There's some fun. That there's some fun to be had. And, that's one of my favorite things about the first episode with Rose, where he says, did I mention it's a time machine? And she just runs right into the TARDIS like that. Yeah. Being with the doctor has got to be fun. But I feel like this, for Tegan, I feel like this is probably what a lot of companions are thinking. Like, I can't do this anymore. Like, I can't almost die again. Or I can't watch you almost die again. Or I can't meet these people and not be able to help them. Or I think a lot of them have these feelings, and I just think Tegan did a really good job of articulating it. And again, this tells you how terrible the Daleks are. That she's been with the Doctor for who knows how long. 3 years in the Doctor world could be
could be 5, 8, who knows?
Wibbly wobbly timey wimey land.
Right.
But she runs into the Daleks once. She's like, I'm out. Because that's how horrifying the Daleks are.
Yeah. I mean, it's just I find she's so upset, and the doctor talks about how he's like, I must mend my ways. Like I must change my ways. Feeling like he's obviously doing something wrong because he compares in a very interesting and very rare moment. For the doctor, we don't get to see it all that often. Is that he's thinking about his time, why he left Gallifrey, and he's articulating it to people, and he's saying this to Turlo, going like, what Tegan is experiencing is what I kind of experienced why I left Gallifrey in the first place. So he understands why she's doing it, and it kind of bothers him because it probably, in his way, he helped cause it.
And he talks about Gallifrey about as much as he talks about other companions.
Yeah.
His past is his past.
Yeah.
And
he leaves it there, and when it all comes up, I think it all comes up, and that happens in this episode. It's the Daleks bringing back up one of his most regretful moments. It's her and how she feels, and reminding him about how he feels. So I think he's really churning up a lot in this episode.
Did they follow through with this, Charles, in later episodes, or was this just kind of one and done? Okay.
No, unfortunately, because like I said, Turlo leaves the next episode, then Davison's doctor regenerates the episode after that in Caves of Androzani.
Okay.
So, if this was done today, it probably would have been followed up on because it's a very interesting, development. It's that the doctor is, he's kind of tipping over into that little darker edge a little bit. And,
I agree.
they kind of touch about, the doctor's darkness when the Valyard comes around in the Colin Baker era in Trial of the Time Lord. Advanced hit. We're going to be talking about that very, 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 very soon. So stay tuned. But there's, is a concept I think worth exploring that the classic era really didn't take advantage of, I think. It's a lost opportunity, I think. All right. Any thoughts about Turlo? I know he doesn't get to do all that much in this story, apart from stumble into a time corridor and then trying to get everybody back through it. He kind of gets underwritten. He gets for what little Tegan gets to do in the story, Turlo gets even less, I think.
Yeah, there's not enough of Turlo in this one, and even though Turlo he's almost trying to be the conscience, a little bit, but it doesn't necessarily work the way. I mean, he's got too much timey-wimey stuff going on. I mean, he's in the wrong place, not where he needs to be the conscience, even though he is saying it. The wrong people aren't hearing. The right people are not hearing it.
Yeah. Now what? Go ahead, Jesse.
Yeah, and I just haven't seen enough of him that I truly don't have a connection to him, right? Like, I think it was the Brigadier, month, right? We
did Modern Undead, his first appearance,
Yeah, and we were like, well, I don't like this guy particularly. I don't know if I trust him in the TARDIS. And
we talked Planet of Fire where he leaves. So yeah, but one thing I thought was interesting, and I noticed this during my rewatch, was that Tegan and Turlo's relationship, because when Turlo first came aboard the TARDIS, he's basically up to shenanigans. He's working for the Black Guardian. He's up to no good. Tegan is extremely distrustful of him. And they bickered back and forth quite a while because of her distrust of him. And by this point where they say goodbye, Tegan considers him to be a friend. And she says, "I'll miss you." So I thought at least there was some development there. Not enough really that probably could have been explored had they thought about it, had they paid more attention to the characterization and development of the companions back then. But at least there was some character development in that regard.
Well, I think there's a pattern in Doctor Who where when it comes to companions, there's a female companion, and then sometimes there's a male companion, and the female companion is like the Doctor's sidekick, and then the male companion is like the sidekick to the sidekick.
Like Rory.
I'm thinking Rory or Mickey.
Yeah.
Or
the companion's companion. Yeah.
And even Turlo, because he's there, but think about the companions we really remember: Liz, Jo, Sarah Jane, Ace, Perry. That's
the strong
that's
women.
Who,
Romana. Yeah.
Romana. Yeah. That's who we're, the Fourth Doctor really remembered those, didn't he? But
well, when he regenerated, I guess. Yeah.
Just a little bit.
Just for a split second, and then
Yeah. What were they married, like 3 years?
Oh, you mean Tom Baker? Oh, Lala Ward.
Tom Baker.
Yeah.
Lala Ward and Tom Baker. I think when it comes to the guys, they're foils more than they are companions. Yeah. They're as much as we joke about Sarah Jane needing to be rescued, I think the guys are there to throw wrenches in the works a lot of the times, because there's already, especially in this era of storytelling, there's not a good way to have like a buddy story with three buddies.
Yeah. Can't have the bromance in the TARDIS.
You can't have the buddy, because the Doctor is always the alpha.
Right.
And it's almost like, and you see this with Rory too. Rory is trying to live up to the Doctor because,
but he's totally a beta. Almost.
Yeah. The male companions are always totally the beta, and the female companions are always very it's almost as though it's safer to have the female companions along for the ride, whereas I don't know if the writers thought of that as something emasculating for the male companions because it is such a beta character.
Yeah.
But because of that, Jesse, I don't think anybody really feels a major connection to a lot of the male companions in these early years.
Go ahead. You're probably going to say it.
The exception being the Brigadier.
Oh.
Because
you went somebody else, but that's okay. I was going to suggest Jamie.
Yeah, I was going to say Jamie too.
Jamie is probably the exception.
He's the exception, but I was thinking the Brigadier because the Brigadier is more like a co-worker of the Doctor.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yes.
So, you feel something a little more for Jamie, you feel something a little more for the Brigadier, and, the fact that they're around the same time is probably no coincidence.
But to be, the Doctor thinks so fondly of the Brigadier that, probably, he talks more about the Brigadier in later incarnations than he does about other companions.
I think the Doctor has to, for his own mental safety, not dwell on the loss of friends.
Right.
Because we've talked about this before, that there's got to be some sort of support group for former companions of the Doctor to have to go back to their workaday world after traveling the universe in all circuits of time.
I still want to write that, by the way. Still.
Seriously, the support, they all get together in like a church basement with cookies and bad coffee and talk about how they're handling normal earthbound life again. And the Doctor, it's the same for him because he is losing his companions, he is losing his friends, and these are people who he saved and they've saved him. But when they're gone, they're gone. It's not like he can very easily call them. And when he does, if he does want to, we've seen it happen before where he shows up and it's like, who are you? You're not the Doctor. You're not the Doctor I know. It's like, I have this, regenerate. I'm a new dude now. So, and you even lose some of that connection sometimes because of that.
So
it's the Doctor's own mental health that he is like, okay, they're gone.
So I want to think that when you're at the Time Lord Academy or the Time Academy, like there's someone who says to them, what's the happiest animal on Earth? A goldfish. You know why? Goldfish only has a 30-second memory. Be a goldfish, Time Lords. That's a Ted Lasso. And the people who watch Ted Lasso are rolling on the floor laughing right now.
All three of them, yes.
No.
All right.
So,
okay.
Yes.
See, I just found out that I have Apple TV for free until July, so I'm going to be watching some of that. So.
Okay.
Yes, please
All
do.
Right. All right.
You can join me on Set Listing Bruce. We'll talk about it.
Awesome.
Okay, because it's very Bruce Springsteen related, obviously.
It is the best thing I've seen on TV, like in the past 9 months.
All right. Anything else about these characters before we move on?
Nope.
Okay. Topic number 2. Let's talk Lytton, who makes his debut here with a couple of sidekick bobbies, and Stein. We could talk a little bit more about his back and forth of his Dalek conditioning. And maybe throw in Professor Laird if you want, or we could talk Styles, the woman who, like I said, attempted to use that big, giant self-destruct snow globe on the Daleks only to fail spectacularly before she could do it. So, Zan, we'll start with you. Any thoughts about Lytton, Stein, or anybody else in our kind of the supporting roles here?
Well,
because I think Lytton's very interesting.
Anybody who works closely with Davros is going to be interesting.
Yeah.
And I think Lytton does a good job of trying to keep Davros down. I mean, of course, you never can. He's Davros. He's horrible.
Right.
But he's whole like, we froze you. You were frozen, and there was this whole war that you totally missed, and now we have parts of your brain, and we have a way to turn the Daleks into snails, essentially. That's what it reminded me of, is when the Daleks destruct at the end of this episode,
Yeah.
they start foaming, like
Right.
when you put salt on snails.
Right.
So,
Even though it looked a little bit more on screen like, oh, we've got a bunch of shaving cream dispensers, and they all pressed down on them, and it all shot out at once. Like a big, like you get those big cans of foamy or what have you.
somewhere that no one has found, or maybe somebody found it when he passed away,
Yeah.
but there is a shoebox full of like 100-pound notes full of all the money that J&T saved from these
Embezzled.
episodes. He's like some depression mom, where you're making,
It's under the mattress.
you're making red-eye gravy and stuff to feed your family of 9 kids, and then when you die, somebody finds like $100,000 in your mattress because you've been pinching pennies for so long.
Right.
So I always like it when humans try and go up against Davros. And Lytton is so smug about it and so thinks he has the upper hand.
Yeah.
And he just doesn't.
No. Because essentially... Go ahead. Go ahead.
What you're going to do by taunting Davros the way he taunts him, you're just going to make Davros mad and bring his health meter like back up to like full Davros.
Right.
And it's like
the
he doesn't know
progress
what
bar
he's doing.
will rise.
Yeah, his progress bar, exactly. Like Davros is the boss, and he's just eating med packs this entire time you're talking to him. And this is just another. Again, there are some. There was an understanding of what the Daleks are when this episode was written. Even if this episode isn't the greatest episode, it's true to Daleks, at least.
Yeah.
Because, again, Lytton is a great example of the only person who understands just how dangerous the Daleks are and just how horrible Davros is the Doctor. Anybody who thinks they can beat the Daleks is an idiot. And Lytton shows us that. And with Stein, I think he's a good character. He does what he's supposed to do. He's an interesting character. You feel sorry for him. You're worried about him. But the whole time I'm watching him, I'm thinking to myself, this is J&T pinching pennies. We have this guy because he doesn't want to build more Daleks.
Yeah.
And so, unfortunately, no matter how many props to the actor, no matter how many props to the dialogue he gets, whatever, the entire time, I'm just thinking, why in an episode that's supposed to be about Daleks do we have a human being controlled by the Daleks, and that's our main Dalek?
Yeah.
And so...
And a bunch of guys running around in Dalek helmets.
Helmets.
That are supposed to make them look more like Daleks.
Right, and I'm sorry, just, domed, smoky plastic a Dalek does not make.
Right.
And so I do like this concept that Daleks can take over these sort of cowardly, weak-minded people, and I like this concept, but it would have been better if there was like 100 Daleks and like 1,000 humans that they've taken over. But there's like 4 Daleks and like 10 guys.
Yeah.
So it's just in the end, and like I said, no slight to the performance at all.
Mm-hmm.
But in the end, it's just disappointing because me personally, and maybe it's because it's been 30, almost 40 years at this point when this episode was made, and I have 40 years of Doctor Who watching under my belt, and 40 years of behind the scenes knowledge and books about Doctor Who, blah 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 blah. All I can see is when I look at it is like trying to save money. And I do the same thing when I watch Star Trek or when I watch Lost in Space or any of those shows that were like, hey, great job, you guys. Wonderful ratings. Your budget's been cut in half. See you later. And we know that there's good ways to do that. If you want to save money with Doctor Who, do it the John Pertwee way. Break down his TARDIS, give him Bessie, make him stay on Earth, give him good companions, and create unit. I mean, there's ways of doing it, and this just wasn't that way.
Yeah. I think the really talented showrunners find ways to overcome that,
Right.
and try to be innovative as a result. Necessity being the mother of invention, that kind of thing.
Exactly. And I feel like Daleks and I am, again, hindsight is 2020, and I'm looking at this knowing what the Daleks are. We hadn't had a lot of Daleks before this episode, but you don't want to mess with the Daleks. That's not the episode you phone in. That's not the episode you say, okay, we only have 2,000 pounds for this one. If you need to cut corners in another episode with a completely different nemesis, completely different enemy, fine. But do not cut corners on the Daleks, because it's just going to be extremely disappointing.
Yep. So, Jesse, any thoughts about Lytton or Stein, who ends up getting, like I said, he's fighting off that Dalek brainwashing?
Yeah, I thought that was an interesting conflict, and he ultimately, fights it enough to do the ultimate sacrifice. The character I was really enjoyed at the beginning of it was Styles.
Yes.
Like I don't think about it. That's the only way I get through. I've got X amount of months till I'm off this, wreck, and I'm worried about the crew. And I was like, this is a fun character.
The doctor,
she's going to die because she's said that I'm going to be, I'm retiring in 6 months.
Right. She does the Danny Glover from Lethal Weapon thing.
Yes, exactly.
I'm too old for this, S. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. That was my exact thought when I heard her say that. I was like, you are too old for this.
Yes. So I would have liked to seen her had a more of a part and more. I thought that was interesting. What I keep going as I'm listening to, this Lytton and them, is I'm going this, and I've complained about this before, Charles, right? Mm-hmm. Like, this trick never works. Like, I'm going to outsmart the Daleks. I'm going to outsmart the Cybermen. And I go back to Rocky and Bullwinkle of my youth, right?
Yeah.
With watching pull a rabbit out of my hat, and Rocky the Squirrel going, this trick never works. And so that's what kept going through my mind. Like, okay, we've seen this before and it never works. Yeah.
I mean, I personally, I found Lytton interesting because when we're introduced to him, when he's breaking Davros out of his prison, we find out that apparently he's been recruited by the Daleks because the Daleks have been in this war with the Mavellans. And we know that, if you watched Destiny of the Daleks, which I know Jesse hasn't done that yet. We haven't talked about it yet. But there's this big war between the Daleks and the Mavellans. And, these are the aliens with a kind of Bo Derek from 10 braid hair that that get referenced in the Peter Capaldi story, the pilot, where, the 12th Doctor takes Bill aboard their spacecraft and they encounter the Daleks during that Dalek Mavellan war. Well, apparently the Daleks and the Mavellans are in this impasse because every time they attempt, some kind of attack, it's instantly anticipated and countered using their various battle computers. So essentially, it's kind of like that one episode of classic Star Trek where you have the computers at war with each other.
Right.
I can't remember the exact title of that story, but
I can't remember that.
But you know the one I'm talking about.
Yeah, I do.
And so essentially, it's kind of like that they basically checkmated each other, or stalemated each other, and so the Daleks have decided, okay, well, let's try to think outside the box a little bit. Let's go get our old creator Davros and spring him from space jail and get him to help us. Maybe think a little bit more unorthodox fashion, perhaps. But what I find interesting is the Daleks aren't the ones that go to spring him. They get a hold of Lytton for whatever reason to do it, because essentially he's like mercenary guy, or guy for hire, and they get him to do it.
And because of that, Charles, it's just proves the point, and we've talked about this before numerous times about numerous franchises. Don't make deals with the most despicable people in the universe. They are never going to honor their part of the bargain.
This deal's getting worse all the time.
Exactly.
It's all Lando Calrissian.
You don't make deals with Darth Vader. You don't make deals with the Harkonnens, and you don't make deals with the Daleks. It's not going to work out in your favor. You're not going to get.
I am altering the deal. Pray I do not alter it any further.
You're going to die. You're going to meet your wife, Dr. Yui, and it's not going to work out for you. And it's a.
I love that we slid through Empire Strikes Back all the way to Dune on that one. That was very nice.
It's just so.
It seems to be a common theme we're talking about these days, like the 80s.
It's a constant thing. Whenever you try and make a deal with the evil guy, thinking you're going to get some sort of payout in the end, you're going to die. You're going to go to jail. You're going to be floating in spit. Whatever. It never works. Stop being an idiot.
Well, the funny part about Lytton, though, he actually gets off scot-free in this one at the very end of the story, because he's like, okay, this is going sideways, so I'm out. And basically he dons a police uniform and just walks right off with his two Bobby henchmen.
I mean, he gets away technically.
And he just walks right away from the whole thing. He's like, that's it.
Yeah.
I'm out.
But he's crossed the Daleks. I don't think this is going to end well for him eventually.
Well, it doesn't, because in Attack of the Cybermen, he gets captured and turned into a Cyberman and then dies.
Yeah, exactly.
So that happened, but for now he gets away with it at least. All right.
For the moment, it seems fine. But yeah, it's you dance with the devil, you get burned.
Yeah. You ever dance with the devil by the pale moonlight? I always ask that of all my prey.
Yeah.
I just like the sound of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's our Batman 1989
always,
reference.
Yes.
The obligatory.
Yes.
But yeah, it just it always cracks me up when you have somebody who things don't work out the way they planned them to because the deal they made with the absolute scum of the universe didn't go their way.
Yeah.
Like, duh, have you ever read anything ever?
Curse your sudden inevitable betrayal.
Inevitable betrayal.
Yeah.
From Firefly.
And that's why I said this trick never works.
Yeah.
No, it never works.
All right. Anything else about these characters before we move on? All right. Topic number 3, final topic. Let's talk. Obviously, we got to talk about our big bad Davros, and who's making some serious moves in this one. Although he ends up kind of becoming a victim of his own horrible machinations by the end of this. And let's talk about the Imperial Daleks, meaning the Daleks that are overseen by the Supreme Dalek, who's kind of taken over in Davros' absence as the head honcho of the Daleks. And we could talk about the Renegade Daleks, the Daleks that Davros, through his mind-controlled minion, Kistin, take their control of their minds as well. And essentially, so we have a little bit, there's like you said, Xan, there's like all of 2 Daleks, but apparently those 2 Daleks are, and Davros and Kistin are apparently a resistance against all those Imperial Daleks that we never get to see. So,
right. It's like have you seen the movie? Have you ever seen the movie Help?
Yes, but with the Beatles, yeah.
The Beatles movie where they're trying to pretend like they have a large police force, but they have like 4 dudes, and then they introduce him, and he goes behind everybody else, and they just keep moving along. Right. So there's like, it seems like there's 20 guys, but there's only 4 of them that they just keep introducing over and over again.
Right.
Yes.
That's how this felt with those dogs.
All right. So Jesse, go. Unless you had something further to talk about Help, go ahead.
No, I just wanted to. When you just mentioned there being only like 4 Daleks, it really felt like they were just sort of. This is the 4 we have, you guys. Let's throw another coat of paint on them and do what we got to do because we're not making any more.
So I always get the Supreme Dalek and Davros. Like, I'll get them confused. I mean, I realize the difference, but like when they're talking about this Supreme Dalek, my first thought is, oh, you mean Davros, right? Like no, that there, and I think it's just in my mind. I always think of him as the, head Dalek. And
Yeah.
no, he's the creator of the Dalek, and there's two different people. And I did think the back and forth bantering of like they're both evilly ambitious, and you both want this, and so I thought that was a little bit interesting. I echo everything Xan said about you. You did not get a lot of Daleks. The minions in the really dumb looking helmet were not very entertaining.
Right.
And so, and the best part of the episodes, I think, is the Doctor doing this mind control, fighting that, going that. And then the idea of, do I kill everything again? Am I this, and do I have that chance? So, as I said, I felt like the Dalek part of this was a copy of a copy. There was not much anything original, and nothing that kind of made me stand out, because there's a whole lot of making duplicates and all these different things.
Dalek clones and all that, yeah.
It seems like you should have gotten one good story and stuck with it.
Well, the Daleks talk about they've got this plan of cloning the Doctor and his companions, and then, like Xan said, using the clones to assassinate the High Council on Gallifrey, which would essentially be the opening salvo of the Time War between the Daleks and the Time Lords. But Davros, they bring in Davros to do this. So essentially, they're doing this war on two fronts almost. They're like, okay, we're fighting with the Mavellans. We need to bring in Davros. But hey, since the Doctor's here, well, why don't we just clone him and then attack the Time Lords? So essentially they want to have a war on two fronts going on.
But that's the Daleks, though. That's all the Daleks
Right.
know.
They just want to kill everybody. Right. I get that.
Right. They're just all about.
That's what they do.
That's all they know is war. That's literally all they know. And because of that, one of the biggest unanswered questions I have for Doctor Who throughout the ages is, how does Davros stay alive as long as he stays alive?
Yeah.
Because
Right.
he, like you were talking about, Jesse, with the Supreme Dalek, Davros is essentially the devil making Daleks in his own image.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you're a megalomaniacal psychopath and you make a bunch of robots that are megalomaniacal warring psychopaths, they are going to be programmed to figure out the weak link in their situation and go for it. And the dude who's made out of foam rubber that can barely even move his own hands, total weak link.
Yes.
So
Right.
the fact that they start to turn on him when they do is always like, you didn't see this coming, Davros. I mean, you didn't put in a Directive 4 as a failsafe for yourself
No.
on this.
Well,
Secret Directive 4.
Well, he's all insistent that, he's not a Dalek. He just created them. But then by the end of the story, he's affected by that Mavellan virus. And he's like, I am not a Dalek. I am not a Darg.
That's another stupid thing on Davros' part. He creates these Daleks who are programmed to basically kill anything that isn't a Dalek.
Right.
And he's like, but I'm not a Dalek. Oh, okay. Just why don't you paint a target on your forehead?
Yeah. Yeah, you were only just born on Skaro, and, you're kind of the same Rogenik material. And you use all that Dalek technology. So,
I mean, you're not a little melty squid, but you're close.
yeah, you're getting there. I mean, and in later episodes, like in Revelation of the Daleks, Davros gets his hand shot off, and
right.
which is why he's wearing that kind of
That's
armor
what he's
glove
got.
in the modern era. So, yeah, so basically they're taking him a piece at a time.
I will say that this Davros, who actually has a mouth that works and stuff,
Terry Molloy's, yeah,
he looks pretty good for Davros, but he's still, he's the weak link in this equation of the Daleks and who their leader is. The Supreme Dalek is just going to get more and more powerful and more megalomaniacal and as hubristic as Davros is.
So
And the fact that he can't see that coming, or that he's surprised when it happens,
right,
is one of his major downfalls as an evil villain.
#sexiest Davros alive. There you go. All right. So one of the things I thought was obviously one of the better parts of this story is the confrontation between the Fifth Doctor and Davros. And it's essentially, this great forum for the Doctor and Davros to kind of spout their various ideologies at each other and call out each other, and which Davros does in spades. He makes fun of the Doctor, calling him weak, essentially, and he's kind of like the Donald Trump of Doctor Who villains in this regard. He's calling everybody weak, and we're going to be strong, and you Time Lords are just like cowards and whatnot. And
I love you.
yeah, exactly. all my best people, all my best Daleks. Love you, Daleks.
Yes, you Daleks I have the loveliest, the most powerful Daleks ever, and we are going to have the best.
I have thousands of Daleks. It's a landslide of Daleks.
We're totally going to take control of the universe. You guys.
Yes.
There's good Daleks on both sides.
Exactly.
But,
it just writes itself, doesn't it?
Writes itself. You're right, Charles. It is the weakest one trying to. It's the biggest loser trying to
be the bully, essentially.
Trying to be better than what it is. Yeah.
Yeah, he's basically like, we're gonna, my Daleks are gonna build after he gets rid of those the ones that, the Daleks get taken out by the Magellan virus. He's like, well, screw that. I'm gonna have the best. I'm gonna build bigger Daleks, and they're gonna be even more powerful and do more. Just all this hyperbole.
Daleks who get captured in war are cowards.
Right. Exactly. So.
Yeah. So.
In case you were wondering what happens. Post-Trump administration. There you go. Just happened that way, I guess. But I did like the confrontation that he has with the Doctor. So, Jesse, what did you make of that? Any thoughts?
Yeah, I thought it was fine. The debate back and forth. Once again, it felt like we've seen this before.
Yeah.
And we're going to see it again.
Yep.
Yeah, and so that
all of this has happened before and will happen again.
Absolutely.
To quote a Battlestar Galactica, that's a different show.
Yes.
It is happening again.
That's another show. Hey.
It is interesting, and we've kind of touched on this already. Seeing
nice.
Seeing your Doctor, who is that boyish charm, having that red hot anger.
Yeah.
That is interesting to see.
Yeah, it is. Davison's obviously, I've talked about this numerous times that he's my Doctor. So this was a very, when I watched this the first time, I'm just like, who's this guy? The Doctor has always been so pleasant and charming and whatnot, and all of a sudden this Doctor takes over because, like we said, we were talking about, Davros especially pushes the Doctor's buttons. He knows how to get under his skin. And the Doctor, by this point, is just like, that's it. I've had enough. I'm going to deal with this once and for all. And it's only because of stupid Stein that he's not able to. But he intended to go through with it. So I thought that was pretty interesting, and you kind of wonder, if they had better writers back then, taken advantage of that and explored that more, what we could have had. Again, it's, I think, lost opportunity. All right, anything else about Davros or the Daleks that we want to talk about? Or anything else about the story that we overlooked?
Not
we good?
Me.
All right.
Yep.
Dan, you're good?
No.
All right, so what's everybody's... and we should probably ask, do you have any favorite quotes of this story?
I do, and this is probably... you might have already written this one, but when Davros, says, "You hesitate, Doctor. If I were you, I would be dead." And the Doctor, "I lack your practice, Davros." And Davros, "You are soft, like all Time Lords. You prefer to stand and watch. Action requires courage, something you lack." And I did like the idea of that, Davros is just all out of Fs.
Yeah.
And he just doesn't believe, I don't think the Doctor's
zero
gonna
F's
do
to
this.
give. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And, just let's do it. Come on. I dare you. I double dare you. Shoot me. Go ahead. And it's just a fun give and take.
Yeah. Because Davros is like, okay, I've been locked up here for 90 years, bored out of my freaking skull. So I want to take care of the Doctor, and the Doctor's like, well, I want to take care of Davros once and for all. So these two are ready to butt heads, go all rock'em sock'em robots.
He didn't have an entertainment chip installed with good Wi-Fi, and it's like
no. He's like, damn it, the Wi-Fi is down.
Yes. That's all I had.
I have one bar. No. Xan, any quotes you want to share?
There weren't any quotes that really stuck with me. I mean, aside from I like what Tegan said, and we already talked about that. But there was a moment where the Doctor is talking to Stein, and he mentions that he wonders what the real you is like, and it just reminded me so much of the song "The Real Me" by The Who.
Okay.
So, as soon as he said that line, I just went, Doctor! It reminded me so much of that Who song.
Nice.
Nice.
All right.
And that song's still in my head. It's been in my head ever since.
The Doctor Who, yes. The Who's.
Can you see the real me, Doctor?
So I've got a couple I'll share. Davros with Lytton, where he says, he's talking about being frozen in the cell. He says, 90 years I was frozen in that. 90 years of mind-numbing boredom. And Lytton says, you were conscious? Davros says, every second. The creatures of Earth have no stomach for judicial murder. They prefer to leave you to rot and die. They call it being humane. Yeah.
You just want to say, you
just want to slap him. Yeah.
You know, go talk to Captain Jack Harkness, you freaking lightweight, if you think 90 years of boredom is a problem.
Right, exactly. Yeah, go talk to the face of Bowes, see what you think about that.
Yeah, if you want to, go, and he's going to be like 90
big old
years.
Face.
90 years next!
Right. And then, let's see, what else? We talked about another Davros and the Doctor exchange where the Davros says, the universe is at war, Doctor. Name one planet whose history is not littered with atrocities and ambition for empire. It is a universal way of life. And the Doctor replies, which I do not accept. And Davros replies to that, then do you deny what is real? So, interesting philosophical discussion there between the two.
Neither one of them's wrong, but
no,
you know.
Yeah, but it's just that outlook that each of them has. All right, so what's everybody's ratings? Xan, we'll go with you first. What's your rating for the story?
I'm going to give this one a 5.
Okay.
It's not
pretty
a great
low.
episode.
Ooh.
It's low. Yeah, it's very low because again, when there's Daleks, you expect something good.
Yeah.
And this episode just doesn't deliver.
Okay.
It gets points. It gets points because we get to see another side of Peter Davison's Doctor. It gets points for being Tegan's last episode. Not that I wanted to see Tegan go,
right?
But as last episodes go, it's just it's a nice clean break, and we get her whole Braveheart and which we're in like 2 more episodes anyway.
Yeah. It's kind of nice that she got to reset what the Fifth Doctor always said to her.
Right. I thought that was
that was kind of nice.
And it gets points for having Daleks, but I feel like this was we wanted Daleks and we got peanuts.
Yeah, well, we've had better Dalek stories, as it turns out.
We've had way better Dalek stories, but like I said, this one does get points for showing us what the Dalek can bring out in the Doctor, and for a very sweet but clean break of an exit for Tegan.
Okay. And Jesse, how about you? What's your rating?
So I'm pretty low too. I'm giving it 6 out of 10 time corridors.
Okay.
As we just talked about, I felt like, this is kind of, we've been there and done that.
Yeah.
And, and bought the celery stick. So,
decorative vegetable. Thank you very much.
Yes, indeed. But it did have a couple, like I said, the parts that I liked were good. And, it's not a bad Doctor Who episode. It's just not an outstanding Doctor Who episode.
Yeah.
From their perspective.
Well, I'm probably a little higher than Jesse, just slightly. So I'm going to give this one 7 out of 10 dorky Dalek helmets because damn.
This is like
Yes.
those Dalek helmets are like the Star Trek
Yeah.
helmet back
Yeah.
in the 70s that was like had nothing to do with Star Trek at all. They just put Star Trek on it and marketed
Yeah.
it for no
Yes.
good reason.
Well, there's like, there's a bunch of like really bad helmet things going on here, or hat things, because that crew that Styles belonged to, that was essentially, in charge of the ship that had Davros on it. They've got these really weird looking pointy ball caps.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then, those Dalek helmets to try to make humans look more like Daleks, where you could just like grab it by the eye stalk and take it off, like Lytton did, and several times. It's just like, why? What's the point? Does the eye stalk do anything? Or is it just, we need to put an eye stalk on this helmet because otherwise people won't know you're in charge of the Dalek, or that you belong to the Daleks.
Exactly. Charles, you mentioned earlier that there were,
It's our branding.
timing issues with this episode, and I think half of it somebody wrote this episode over a weekend and then told somebody to by Wednesday get us costumes.
Yeah. Well, Eric Saward was the script editor, and he wrote this one, so I think all he has to do is blame himself, right, on this one?
Oh, I'm still going to blame J&T.
Okay. Well, can we blame both of them? How about we blame both of them?
No, because
Saward is no prize either.
Didn't J&T hired Seward?
Yeah, he did.
So it's all J&T.
Okay. Yeah, but you gotta, Saward has to be accountable too, in my opinion.
I suppose, it's like one of those Law and Orders where it's like the guy that actually does the hired murder goes to jail, but so does the guy that hires the guy.
Got it.
He gets the 25 to life, but the other guy makes the deal and he's out in 7.
Okay, so you basically want to get the big boss. You don't want to go for the small fish.
I'll make a deal with Saward if he gives me J&T and I can knock him up and throw it at him.
All right, so we got to get something on Saward so that we can use it to have him flip on J&T, is what you're saying.
Exactly. That's the plan.
Okay,
yeah.
I see what you're saying. All right, reverse the reverse polarity. I know we're running a little long, so I'll just, mention that if you enjoyed Resurrection of the Daleks, I'm going to recommend something I think is a little better. Reverse the reverse polarity all the way to 2015 with The Magician's Apprentice / The Witch's Familiar, which was the first and second episodes of Series 9 in 2015, written by a certain Stephen Moffat. Maybe you've heard of him. And this was where we had the 12th Doctor, that we find that, we get this little prelude at the beginning where he's like on this battleground and we're not sure where he is. It's all like misty and smoky. And he encounters this young boy who turns out to be Davros, who's trapped in this hand mine field, with all these hands sticking out of the ground. And, and the Doctor essentially says, "Oh, you're Davros? Well, see ya. Bye. Sorry about your luck." And then he ends up feeling guilty about it. And Davros gets a hold of him. The adult Davros later gets a hold of him and tries to get him, captures him and his companions and whatnot. They get him on Skaro. And then the Doctor, feeling guilty about this, or at least acting like he's feeling guilty about this, tries to give some sympathy to Davros, who's essentially looking for a glow-up from the Doctor's regeneration energy. And then he does that, and the Daleks get regenerated, but so do some insane Daleks who end up attacking the Skaro City and attacking Davros and taking care of that threat. And
in that episode, you get a couple more Daleks.
Yeah, just one or two, right?
Just a few more.
Well, you get to see a whole bunch from all the different Dalek eras, which is very cool.
You get literally all of the Daleks at once.
You even get Clara in a Dalek.
I know.
The housing, the casing. That's where I was looking for.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, after being tricked, Jedi mind tricked by Missy.
Yeah, you literally get all the Daleks in that episode.
So it's a much better story. So I recommend that one. If you're looking for something a little better, or if you just actually enjoyed Resurrection of the Daleks, check out this one too. I think you'll find it even better. So that's my recommendation. All right. So listener feedback. We've got a couple of feedbacks once again by our two wonderful regular letter writers. So, of course, we have Holly Mack writing in, and we also have Dave Proctor writing in about Resurrection of the Daleks. So, Jesse, do you want to take one while I take the other?
Yeah, you want to do Holly and I'll do Dave?
Okay,
or
sounds
you want
good.
Vice versa.
I can do
Okay.
Holly's. All right. So, the wonderful Holly Mack. So, writing in, once again, Holly from Wisconsin. So, hi, Holly. You know, one of our favorite Five-ish fangirls writing in about Resurrection. Says, hey, Charles, it's Jesse and Xan. Hi, Holly.
Yeah, hey there.
Hi, Holly.
I have to say it's been a while since I've seen this one, or heck, the first time I've ever seen it. With all the R's of the Daleks we've had over the years, it's hard to keep them straight. What do you mean, like resurrection, revelation, remembrance, resolution, revolution of the Daleks more recently, that kind of thing? No big deal. The Doctor with Teagan and Turlo. I know that Turlo redeemed himself at the end of his run, but I still get hackles every now and again when he suggests things to the Doctor. Is this suggestion you're offering trying to be helpful, or are you trying to be hurtful? The Daleks sure know how to make an entrance. Yes, they do. Hello, Davros, my not-so-old friend. You've come to overtake things once again. Sorry, couldn't resist the paraphrase of Simon and Garfunkel's.
Yes, very nice.
So, she says, hello, darkness, my old friend. I think she's referring to the sound of silence. Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, she's totally referring to the sound of silence.
Yeah.
Yes.
And the Daleks, when they're out of their protective casing, have alien facehugger-like tendencies. Yes, they do. I'm thinking of that poor sergeant who gets attacked by a Dalek blob, not once, but twice in this story.
Yes.
So every time you turn around, like that Dalek's back on his throat, gnawing away, going nom 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 nom. Yeah, yeah. Until the Doctor shoots him, that is. Kind of ties, of course, the man the Doctor and the rest of the group helped would be a Dalek agent. Yep. Kinds of ties back slightly to the Big Finish out of time story from a few weeks ago with the duplication machines. Yep. The Dalek plans for the duplicates of the Dr. Turlo and Teagan to head back to Gallifrey and take out the High Council was quite the plan. There was one slight flaw in the clone Dalek agents. Memory's not all it's cracked up to be. Sure, Davros, you're going to program the Daleks to be more compassionate and tone down their violence. Sure you are. Davros, near the end, finding out about the Supreme Dalek's plan to take him out was quite interesting, and he still winds up saving his own bacon, if only for a short time. Tegan telling the Doctor at the end that she wants to stop traveling with him because she's tired and she can't take it anymore. All in all, a good episode. I'll wrap it up here. Holly from Wisconsin. Thank you, Holly.
Thank you very much, Holly.
We always appreciate you writing in.
Yes.
So keep it up. All right.
Our good friend
Dave Proctor. Hey, Dave.
Says, sorry I've been away so long. I hope all of you are well. I'm enjoying the podcast, but haven't seen the subject, so writing in didn't seem right. Sorry about the Browns, Charles. At least the Patriots aren't going to the Super Bowl again.
No, but it's frickin' Tom Brady is.
Yes. I don't think this was the best story in general or the best Dalek story either, but it certainly wasn't the worst of either. The Davison years are still mostly unseen by Proctor eyes, except for what I've watched for this podcast. He is good.
You're damn right he is.
Yeah. Darth Vader, Dark Helmet, and an adult toy manufacturer seem to have designed the helmets the Dalek agents wore. Yes. I like
You're
that.
giving the helmets too much credit, Dave.
Yeah. Davros always thinks the Daleks will worship him as their creator, but they certainly don't see it that way. They use him when they need him, but don't respect him. Good point. Surprise!
I hope they bought him dinner first.
Yeah, that was funny. I laughed out loud. A good tension break. But then we see a Dalek mutant running around without armor. This seemed like a theme that repeated recently. 13 would have felt right at home.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Let's be glad they didn't kill a cat, right?
Yes. I enjoyed the review of past Doctor incarnations and companions. I agree. I thought that was very good. Mm-hmm. Doctor thinks not destroying the Daleks was a mistake. I'm sure this is one of the things she goes back and forth on, but perhaps the Time War would have driven the genocide thoughts to the front. Goodbye, Tegan. It seems like a big deal when a companion goes, but even bigger when they witness a regeneration. Seems like one of the things you wouldn't believe until you see it. Tegan was an accidental companion, so I understand she might stress out quicker than others. was Nissa?
Nissa.
Nissa? Nissa. I suppose I'll have to complete my journey. I'm going the long way. I give this story 8 accidentally, I hope, phallic helmets. Stay well, Dave Proctor.
Does he give good helmet?
He gives very good helmet. Yes. Thank you, Dave. I appreciate that
quote
very much.
Spaceballs a little bit.
Yes.
By the way,
Yes.
if you're wondering about Nissa, she had left prior to the story. She left in the episode Terminus, which was the previous season. So she'd been gone quite a while by this point. So, in case you're wondering. All right. So, yeah, thank you, Holly. Thank you, Dave. Always love hearing from you. So if you want to write to us like Holly and Dave did. You can reach us at nextstopeverywheresmg@gmail.com. That's nextstopeverywheresmg for Southgate Media Group at thegmail.com. Or you can find us on Twitter at nextstopsmg on Twitter. Facebook, of course, Next Stop Everywhere, the Doctor Who podcast. Or Instagram at Next Stop Everywhere podcast. And Xan, where can they reach you out there on the interwebs?
Udinax19 on the Twitter, on the Instagram, Xan Sprouse on the Facebook. And if you want to hear some more of me, everybody out there in podcast land can listen to you and me, Charles, talking about all things tangentially Twin Peaks and David Lynch related on Ghosts with the Twin Peaks podcast, which tomorrow we will be recording and discussing Wild at Heart and why it represents my individuality and my belief in personal freedom.
Yes.
And which I cannot say enough times.
I feel like you should be donning a snakeskin jacket when you say that. Doing your karate moves.
Yeah, doing my karate moves. And then you can listen to me and Charles get drunk and discuss our favorite movies on Drunk Cinema. Next time will be a memorial movie.
Tribute
sadly.
episode. Yeah, it is an episode we played it as a fun one and then it turned into a tribute, didn't it?
Now it's going to be sad. And then myself, DJ Nick, and Rachel Friend, and sometimes Charles, sometimes Jesse, sometimes Holly, as we discuss Oscar winners and whatever our patrons want us to discuss on Gold Standard, the Oscars podcast.
Return of the Jedi, just saying. It's out there. I got to complete the trilogy.
Hey, $5 and you're there, Charles.
All right, sounds good. Jesse, how about you? Where can they reach you?
So I am at Jesse Jackson DFW on Twitter. You can find me Jesse Jackson on Facebook. So I have a request. I now have a burning desire to create a TARDIS FAQ sheet. So
yes.
If you have any suggestions, any ideas, either email them to Next Stop Everywhere, send it to me via Twitter, and I will try to put all this together and come up with a TARDIS FAQ sheet.
There might be one already out there on the internet somewhere. We don't know.
There probably is, but we're going to make one our own.
Right.
You can hear me, Charles and I, along with the Effermoken, easy for me to say, DJ Nick are going the Phantom Zone. We are going through WandaVision. That has been very interesting and a lot of fun. I warn you ahead of time. The episodes are 30 minutes. Charles, Nick, and I talked an hour and a half about episode 3.
That's right. There was that much to talk about.
We really did tear it apart and just kind of broke it apart and talked about it. So
it's kind of like when Xan and I talk a Twin Peaks episode or a David Lynch film. We really break it down.
Yeah,
there's a lot going on.
Yeah.
I hope you are checking out WandaVision and then come over and go to the Phantom Zone. How many where me and a bunch of buddies talk about pop culture? I know Dave Proctor is joining us on there, and he just sent us some nice feedback on that.
Excellent.
And then, of course, Set Listing Bruce, where I talk to music fans from around the world, not just about Bruce Springsteen. I just talked to a lady Sunday night who is in Iceland about Leonard Cohen. And it was a very great discussion about how his music influenced even it picked where she went to school. And it turns out a lot of people went to school in Montreal because of Leonard Cohen. That's
interesting.
Yeah, that was a really good, interesting. It's going to come on in a couple of weeks. Just as a side point, Leonard Cohen and Bruce Springsteen might have the two most misunderstood songs and used inappropriate in the universe. Hallelujah and Born in the USA. So that was just one of the things we talked about.
Okay.
Charles, how about you?
Well, of course, me, at Charles Skaggs on Twitter, at Charles Skaggs on the Instagrams, Facebook, Charles Skaggs in Hilliard, Ohio, or my blog of geeky things.
Damn good coffee. And hot.
Damn good coffee and hot, where I talk about all the stuff we talk about here on Next Stop. So, Doctor Who, Torchwood, Sarah Jane Adventures, Big Finish audios, and more. All kinds of comic book, sci-fi news of my other podcasts for the Southgate Media Group, including, well, like the aforementioned Ghost with the Twin Peaks podcast, where Zane and I talk all things David Lynch, Twin Peaks, and whatever nonsense pops into our brain at a particular moment in time. And right now, like Zan says, we're going to be talking Wild at Heart. So I just finished rewatching that Tuesday for, I believe, the fourth time I've seen that movie. And so I think we got a lot to talk about on that one, especially just some very, very horrible. I thought there's so many horrible characters in this movie that I'm sure it's going to be a pretty interesting discussion. So check that out. And then, like Zan said, Drunk Cinema, where we just finished talking The Adventures of Buckaroo Banzai and had a ball doing that. I had a lot of fun. Zan almost killed herself trying to dig out some Buckaroo Banzai memorabilia, falling down.
Oh, I was trying to lean over the back of a chair, and there's this thing called gravity.
Right.
That I momentarily forgot about.
So if you find that interesting, and I think you would, check that out. And coming up, when you do our next episode, like Zan said, we're going to be doing a tribute to the late, great Frau Blücher. Yeah, exactly. As we discuss Young Frankenstein. Frankenstein. Yeah, exactly. The Mel Brooks classic from, the 1970s.
Yes. We all know what he did.
Yeah, we're going to finally break out of the 80s, and we're going to go to the 70s for once.
Yeah, we are.
Yeah, we are. So there you go. So if you're wondering,
but it's possibly the greatest American comedy in the history of American comedy film.
I'd say it's easily top 5, if nothing else. Yeah, definitely.
Oh, it's top 2.
Top 2? You think it's top 2? Interesting.
Oh, yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
There's a bold statement. So if you want to hear more, check us out on Drunk Cinema. And then, like Jesse said, we're talking WandaVision on the Fandom Zone, having a ball with that. Episode 3 was just really starting to peel back those layers as we got our first glimpse of the real world outside of this fictional Twilight Zone-esque sitcom reality that Wanda has apparently created for herself. Got some serious Bill Mumy from the Twilight Zone vibes a little bit.
Whoa, what?
Yep. Bill Mumy, this is why I mentioned this, because WandaVision, Episode 3, we definitely get some Bill Mumy from the Twilight Zone vibes in that story.
Like cornfields?
Yes.
Like people
right.
being forced to do things we don't want to do.
You guys may have sold me on WandaVision.
I think you need to check it out. At least definitely hanging into Episode 3. That's the one that'll really lock you in.
All right.
So you need to check that out and then listen to us on the Fandom Zone. See? Just like that. Titan Talk the Titans podcast, which is on hiatus, but we talk Titans and Doom Patrol with DJ Nick and a certain Jesse Jackson. Maybe you've heard of that guy. So that's pretty much it. So everyone, Zan, thank you so much for coming on board here this time.
Thanks for having me.
We finally got to talk some Daleks. I'm sorry it wasn't a better story to talk about.
But I mean, if you're going to talk Daleks and Peter Davison, we don't have a lot of choices.
No, we don't, because he only battled them the one time, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So, we get to talk.
Unless we do Big Finish audios.
That's the thing. I mean, if we're going to talk why would I listen to Peter Davison when I can look at him?
Well, you could always just look at a picture of Peter Davison while you listen.
Hey, that's not a bad idea. But
you're welcome.
Yeah, if you want to talk about Peter Davison and Daleks, you don't have a lot of choice. So
yeah, no, you don't.
I'm glad I got to be on for this one. Thanks for having me.
You're always welcome to come back, and we've got you slated for a couple more, at least on the near future.
Always love visiting with you, Zan. I'm very happy to do, and I will say that I've missed hearing you guys talk X-Files. That was a fun little, side trip you guys took on. So
and
yes,
Ghostwood, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a good time.
Our little odyssey. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
That was a lot of fun. All right. So everybody, thanks again for listening. Thanks everybody for writing in. Keep writing in because next time on Next Stop Everywhere, episode 217, as we discuss the mysterious planet, which some of you may know as the first story in the Trial of the Time Lord, season 23 from the classic Doctor Who era, which featured the final season of Colin Baker. So what better person to join us for that than Rachel Friend from the Five-ish Fangirls podcast and Gold Standard, the Oscars podcast. We brought her in, say, hey, do you want to talk one of the stories? And Rachel has decided she wants to talk all of them. So February is officially Trial of a Time Lord month here on Next Stop Everywhere. And this should be a good one. This should be one for the book. So, Jesse, are you looking forward to it?
I am. I had shared with you, I had watched this to get ready to, I was interviewing Colin Baker at Comic Palooza. So I have seen these. So I'm really looking forward to watching them again with more of an understanding of what's going on. So, yeah, I'm really looking forward to this.
So it's been a while.
Yeah, it's been like 6-7 years.
All right. And I'm just glad because, they've recently released season 23 as a Blu-ray set.
Ah, okay.
With some little tweaks here and there, and definitely looking forward to checking that out, finally. I've been kind of saving this one because I've been wanting to talk about it, and now we finally booked a month, like where I set this all aside so that we could finally do it properly and do all 4 stories.
Good.
And Rachel's going to be joining us for all of them. So.
Oh, nice.
So we've kind of like got a little mini regular companion going on here next time. So Xan, thanks again. Jesse, thank you as always. Everybody coming back next time, episode 217, The Mysterious Planet with Rachel Friend. It's going to be fabulous as we get our multicolored doctor coats on right here on Next Stop Everywhere, the Doctor Who podcast. Goodbye, everybody.